Ladies and gentlemen, now hosting the RizzoCast, put your hands together for Steven Risotto!
What's going on, everybody, and welcome. My name is Steven Risotto. I cover the San Francisco Giants for SFA, and I'm the host of RizzoCast, a podcast that features current and former big league players, coaches, fans, media, and others who are regarded as some of the brightest minds around the game of baseball. Today's guest is McCovey Cove Dave. He's one of the more well-known San Francisco Giants fans and the man responsible for retrieving dozens of splash hits from inside the kayak in San Francisco Bay outside Oracle Park. He's done that for the better part of 20 years. So he's very recognizable for his custom sweatshirts and hats, outgoing social media presence, and commitment to ball hawking. The next ball the Giants crush into McCovey Cove will actually be splash hit 100. And Dave is considered to be the front runner to make a play on that. So we talk about that, how he started attending games in his kayak, his strategies, the competition in the water, his fandom, all of that and so much more coming up next on RizzoCast. This is episode number 138. I loved every minute of this conversation. Let's get started. All right, and we are here with McCovey Cove Dave himself, and Dave is nice enough to join RizzoCast. Dave, how you doing? Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm just enjoying this beautiful Bay Area weather, and I'm gaining my strength because the next home game is Monday night, day after Mother's Day.
Monday night, I will be there in the press box covering the game. I'll have to walk by and say hello. And I guess before we get started, Dave, last year I experienced McCovey Cove for the first time, and that's kind of where I had met you for the first time. And I think I messaged you beforehand and said, hey, what do you do? I've never kayaked before in my life. I asked for some tips, and you were nice enough to. It was against the Phillies, and I remember saying hello to you. And as we were talking, I hear Rennell, who, by the way, Rennell Brooks-Moon, a friend of the podcast. Rennell said, "Now batting, Bryce Harper," and you said, "Gotta go," and you raced over.
For every lefty, I would say one of the Giants home run most, but any lefty who's famous, like a Harper or someone could really hit it hard, I take position. And that's actually, I think, my greatest strength is that I generally am the best position kayaker. So the ball comes to me. It doesn't always work, but I use a little bit of math and it works on average.
Absolutely. You have the spray charts. I know. Is that right? The spray charts. Do they ever do you wrong?
They help me so much. I mean, so many home runs actually come to me. And then if I have messed up, as long as I'm alert, there is a chance I can cover ground and even get into the fray. Like Charlie Blackmon last year, I was the third person to the ball, but I got the ball and I was willing to swim. I was most prepared. So you can luck out too.
Absolutely. And I guess one of the big storylines at the moment is regarding the storylines regarding baseball at Oracle Park is the prospect of this 100th splash hit. The tracker obviously currently sits at 99. I'd imagine you, McCovey Cove Dave, would want to be the one to retrieve that 100th splash hit. What's the game plan for you looking forward to that swing?
So once 99 was hit, which is about a little over 2 weeks ago by Brandon Crawford, which was controversial on its own because the splash camera that's always mounted on the wall of the park was missing. The Fox News wanted to use it somewhere else. And because of it, there was no videotape. So for almost 24 hours, there was a debate, but I got it and it didn't touch any part of the park. And we had lots of people that eyewitnessed the whole thing. But once 99 was hit, I'm into trying to go to every game, which is pretty difficult because I do some part-time work. You got to get there. But right now I'm going into virtually every game. And so you might have a homestand of 6 games or 8 games. You have to be ready for all of them. And that's what I'm doing right now. My kayak is at the park, so at least it's simple from that side. But I will be out there all 6 games of this next homestand trying to outposition my competition. And now I have my best competitors. So normally I get the home run ball 2 out of 3 times, about 65%. but it will be not that high of an odds because more of the experienced guys are out there. Maybe I'm down to 40% chance. But I'm going to do my best. And if I get that ball, I have a dream of giving it to Cooperstown. So I've just been working with the Giants today, and I'm lining up so that we can do authentication so that the authenticator inside the park will authenticate that ball if I get it or one of my friends gets it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think there's anybody better to get it than you because you're kind of like the mayor down there in McCovey Cove. And we'll get to that in just a second. But I do want to ask because the Giants have a few left-handed hitters. We're recording this on May 13th on a Saturday. But as of now, the Giants have a few left-handed hitters that are kind of on the shelf. Mike Yastrzemski's hurt. Brandon Crawford's hurt. So the $1 million question right now is who is going to be the one to hit it? Do you have any guesses?
Yeah, in the old days, there was really just one or two strong left-handers for the Giants. But now we really, if when Yastrzemski comes back, we have four strong left-handed hitters, Wade, Jock, Conforto, Yastrzemski. And then we have a couple guys that could hit it in still, which is a lot of lefties. Very few teams in Major League Baseball have four really good lefties. They just don't have them. And I think Jock will hit it. I think he wants to hit it more. He hit 3 foul balls into the Cove the last week or so, and he was just swinging so hard, and they went really deep. And I think that's an indication that he wants to win the players have a pool, and I think Jock is the high probability candidate.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I wouldn't doubt it. Jock is a guy that I feel like would want that crown to hit the
Yes.
100th splash hit in the McCovey Cove. All righty. Let's get into your career a little bit. I know you spent a lot of time in the East Bay during your childhood and went to high school in Oakland. Was it Giants all the way for you, or was there some A's mixed in too?
The A's were mixed in, but actually, I'm so old that when I started getting into baseball, the Giants were the only team.
Yeah.
So the first year that I started following baseball, where I looked in the old days, what you would do is you would listen to the games on radio, and then you would look at the box scores in the sporting newspaper. So every morning, I would look out the box scores. I would listen in this very room I'm in. In the summer of '63, as a 7-year-old, I was listening to as many Giants games as I could, me and my brother. So the A's didn't come here till '68. So I had 5 years of the Giants. And so they were kind of like the new team. And I did go to some of the great games they had there because they had some great teams in the early '70s. But before the A's got here, I'd already gone to Giants games in Candlestick Park and fallen in love with the team and my favorite player, Willie McCovey.
McCovey was your favorite guy. Why? Why is that?
Well, I'm a lefty, and so I was partial lefties. My favorite play was the home run. And so he hit gigantic home runs. He was a lefty. And then whenever I listened to him on the radio, he seemed like a great human being. And so I liked that he was kind of a gentle giant, and he was that way his whole career. And I had the pleasure of meeting him when he was an older man, and he even signed one of my first hoodie for McCovey Cove that said Dave. He signed it for me, which is awesome.
Can you imagine if Willie McCovey got to play at Oracle Park and the amount of splash hits that he would have hit into the water? I think Barry Bonds would have had some competition with that with the
Oh,
counter.
definitely. Someday they will actually break Barry's record of 35. It sounds like it's unbeatable, but I believe that record will be broken in the next 100 years. It needs to be a player that basically is brought up in the Giants organization who's a lefty power hitter that the Giants keep for 15 years. But it's not inconceivable to me that a super duper lefty power hitter could hit 40 or more splash hits, because Barry did it as an old guy. Yes, he had some enhancements, but that record will be broken probably after I'm long gone.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. 35 is a big number, but with the way that these guys are, approaching opposing pitchers nowadays, I wouldn't doubt it because we kind of do live in an era where the three true outcomes
Yes.
kind of live on a little bit. And kind of going back to your roots a little bit, I have seen pictures of you hitting up the Oakland Coliseum with a glove. We don't. Some people have probably never seen you out of a kayak, so it was an interesting look to see you walking around with a glove at Oakland. What are your thoughts, I guess, on kind of the A's moving out of there? Because you did mention that you have
Yeah,
seen a Bay Area baseball scene without
yeah,
the A's, but
yes.
it's kind of a little bit of a tough situation with the A's possibly on their way to Las Vegas.
Yes, I do. While I go to 40 Giants games a year, I have been to 100 A's games over maybe the last 6 or 7 years, for instance. So, as many as 30 a year, I will go to. So, when the Giants are on the road, I take my mitt and I hit the A's, and I've caught a lot of home runs there too. But it is kind of sad. But I do realize that most franchises have had many stops. The A's started out in Philly and whatever. You could probably talk to someone's great grandfather and he would say, "Oh, it's the Philly A's. They won the World Series in 31. They're our team." And then, of course, they went to Kansas City for a brief stay. They're at Oakland and most likely go to Las Vegas. So I actually think that many teams will go to many cities over there over a few X hundred years, and it is kind of sad for the A's to lose them, but um, it really is baseball. There's very few teams that have been in the same city for 100 years. Like very few. The Yankees have done it. The Dodgers haven't done it. The Giants haven't done it. I mean, most people haven't done it. So it's sad. I will go now to A's games when I visit Las Vegas, and it's sad for A's fans, but honestly, there's not as many A's fans. Having gone to a lot of games, the number of A's fans at the park so many times, it's less than 10,000, and that's I've been to many games in the last few years where there's 5 or 6,000. So anyhow, they're going to become Giants fans, I guess.
Yeah, possibly. It's definitely going to be an interesting thing to see how that works with the Giants fan base. And I'd mentioned that a lot of people don't really know your life outside of the kayak. I read up on you a little bit. You were an economics major from Cal Berkeley back in the day, and you worked in kind of the
Wow, you know
technology
it. Yes,
world.
that's true.
I mean, technology world. So it's not McCovey Cove Dave. Before McCovey Cove Dave, it was Technology World Dave, and that was kind of right around the time when
Yes.
the big tech boom was happening. So, kind of, what are you your memories? I guess your life before the kayak in the cove.
Yeah. So I did, after I graduated from Cal Berkeley, I did get a master's in business and marketing at UCLA. And I started working and I had a 20-year career at Hewlett Packard Company, which back then was a much bigger company in the technology world. It's lost ground to obviously Google and Apple. But in the 80s and 90s, when I worked there, it was a big company, and I basically was their assistant treasurer. I manage all their worldwide cash. I manage all their cash flow. I'm actually mainly a finance guy, and so I manage things like derivatives, which are financial instruments used to manage risk. And that actually helped me when it came to predicting where balls will land, because using financial concepts was common to me. And basically, after 20 years, they were downsizing, and my brother sadly had died the year before of a heart attack in his 40s. And I said, I'm going to take some time off. There's a whole bunch of things I want to do, and one of them is I want to catch a McCovey Cove home run. So to 200 of my best friends at Hewlett Packard, I said, I'm going to try to become the best spearfishing athlete. I participate in a sport called freedive spearfishing. I'm going to try to be the best one I could be. I'm going to catch a McCovey Cove home run. I'm going to spend my time with my mom learning all her famous family recipes. And I did every one on that list, but it took me a while to do them all. But I ended up basically taking 8 years off. I could have made a lot of money, but I would never trade the money that I gave up for the fun and experiences I had. I became national team champion in freedive spearfishing, went to the world championships as an old guy, and qualified for the world championships another time. And I caught a lot of home runs in McCovey Cove.
Yeah, I mean, just I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that about you. I mean, you seem like just such a very adventurous and sporty person. I guess what's the background in kayaking? I guess when did kayaking start? When did you first
Yes.
start being around water? Where did that
Yes.
start?
So my dad was a really good swimmer, and he actually built kayaks when he was young. And so we spent our summers basically swimming and diving as water people. My dad loved to fish. He taught me to free dive, which is basically holding your breath and diving down. And we practiced that. And that later became a real asset. In the sport of freedive spearfishing, most of the time it starts off with a kayak race where you're in one central location in the ocean and a gun goes off and you have 7 hours to hunt. It's like an Easter egg hunt where you got to get a yellowfish, a pinkfish, a white. Some you've got to dive deep, some in rough water, but you have to be a fast kayaker. So in my 40s, I really became a fast kayaker. And that's an advantage in McCovey Cove because most of my competition, they picked up kayaking late in life and they never had to do it in like speed conditions. So, my kayak, it's like a bullet. It someday I won't be able to ride it because it's so tipsy, but it's a bullet. If it's a race, I can still beat the 20-year-olds in the Cove, because it's really mainly because of that kayak is speedy.
And you just mentioned that you went to a lot of games at Candlestick. So when the Giants opened at the corner of Third and King, and there's an open body of water there, I mean, you were probably going nuts thinking about the prospects of catching
Yeah.
a home run ball. I guess when you first started
Yes.
regularly going, was there a lot of people there? Was it just you? Because I know in
Yes.
the early days, if you watch the Barry Bonds clips, there's a good amount of kayaks that are out there, but you kind of started going a little bit later on, maybe about 10 years later. Do I have that right?
Yeah. So what happened is the park opened in 2000. Unfortunately, at that time, I was working 10-hour days, 6 days a week at my job. I just had no time, and I badly wanted to go to McCovey Cove. So when I left on September 1, 2001, in still the second year of the park, I left Hewlett Packard, and the first game I went to was October 5th, 2001, and that was the night that Barry hit the 70th and 71st home runs of that year. And that night, because it was a milestone trying to beat Mark McGwire's home run record, there might have been 150 kayaks. It was a zoo out there. And I knew I loved it immediately, although it was kind of crowded. And the first home run, number 70, it went high in the air. Now, this is the first time I'd seen a ball from McCovey Cove, and it was night and the light was on it. And I was hoping it was going to come out, but it fell short. But I yelled, "There it is!" And the Mercury News wrote about it, said, Dave Edlund saw it last night first and yelled, "There it is!" And unfortunately, I was trying to become national champion in that other sport, so I had to decide which thing to do. I wish I'd taken more time in the kind of, I'm going to call it the PED era, to be in McCovey Cove, because I could have caught many of those Barry Bonds home runs. Initially, the first year and a half, as you know, Stephen, they used Zodiac boats. But in August of 2001, just before I got there was an accident where a surfer and a Zodiac collided. It was a near, I mean, the surfer could have lost a leg or got badly injured. So the Giants said, from now on, August of 2001, you can only use human powered craft, which is the kayak. So when I got there in October, it was all kayaks and surfers, and the Zodiacs were gone. I really couldn't become a regular until my team won the national championships in July of 2005. And when I came out, my first home run was Randy Wynn, splash at 39. And many people probably forgotten, but in the month of September of 2001, Randy Wynn hit 51 hits, which became a Giants single month record. And that home run right here, yes, that home run, it's part of that record. It's part of the 51 balls. So one of the things I like about baseball is there's a lot of records that are numbers oriented, and I'm a numbers guy. So I really take pleasure that home run right here that he hit off Woody Williams, is part of that record. And so in 2005, when I came out, Barry, those last few years, was not hitting him like he did between 2004. So I kind of missed it. But in 2005, he would hit batting practice balls, and I got a lot of those. And one time, my job now is recovering golf balls at golf courses. And this ball here, which is hard to see, it says Barry Bonds on it. He was playing in a celebrity tournament at one of my golf courses, and he hit this ball in the water. And I came about a week later, and they go, I think Barry hit one in 8. So I found every ball in that pond, which is about 3,000 balls. And this was one of them with his name on it. So sometimes people go, have you got a Barry Bonds ball? Yes, I got one.
There it is. That's awesome. Yeah, and I do want to ask about the daily routine when you're attending a game. So let's use, as an example, a night game. So if you're leaving for a night game, what time do you leave the house? What time do you arrive at the ballpark? Are you there for first pitch? Tell me a little bit about the routine and how you're getting there.
So in the old days, I used to do batting practice and the game, but right now when I'm focusing on game home runs, I'm just getting there 15 minutes before game time just to be positioned. I don't want to miss any bit of the game. My kayak is actually kept there at Pier 40 now. I have it locked up. And so most of the time now, I actually take Bay Area Rapid Transit trains. I go from the Oakland, Berkeley area where I'm living underneath the bay, and I arrive over in San Francisco. From the time I drive my truck to the barge station till the moment I get in my kayak and I'm in McCovey Cove, it's about an hour, 15 minutes, cutting down to the minimum. But I'll leave a comfort level in case I miss a train. So the key things you need to have a radio. Many times I have 2 radios, and they're in my backup one is in a waterproof container. So if my kayak flips over, and sometimes it does, I have security. My phone's there, which I need for social media. Sometimes if I'm learning the positions of the opponents, I've written in there in a plastic exactly where to position myself for Bryce Harper, what I think is the most highly probable landing location. I bring a small amount of food. We don't have any bathrooms in McCovey Cove. So for that period of time, there's no number 2s being done. No numbers 2. I basically, once I leave home until I get back, I cut down my water consumption. Some guys are drinking like a beer every hour or every couple innings, and they go and they're wasting a lot of time, but I'm always focused on the game. I'm just focused on the hitters coming up and what position. And then also I have my competitors. If they get too close to me, I might have to move out of the prime area, because you have to leave room for maneuverability of your kayak. I'm always thinking, what probability do I have of getting the ball based on where I am? Do I have 50%, 60%? And then can I maneuver these guys, outmaneuver them somehow?
So do you have to balance being kind of like a nice guy in the Cove and kind of being like hey, welcome, it's your first time in the Cove, how you doing? I'm McCovey Cove Dave. And then you have to balance that with like this alter ego where it's like, I'm going to beat you to the spot. Is that a hard balance?
That's true. That is a really hard. So I try my hardest to be a ambassador for the Giants in the Cove. I don't always, like right now, because I'm so focused on Hunter, maybe I'm not as friendly, but in general, the day you were out there, you probably saw a lot of people yell my name from the arcade wall. I might wave to 100 people during a typical game. So I'm pointing at them, I'm trying to recognize them, but I'm also trying to do, to be positioned for it. And I think I do paddle harder for a Giants home run. My percentage of home runs that I get that are Giants splash hits are higher. I'm a little not quite as quick, and it's because I want to get a metered home run. And so far I've gotten 23 home runs that are on the meter at the Giants, and I have 11 of opponents. So I have 34 splash hits that touch nothing. They go straight to the water. And then I've gotten 14 balls that, it hit the flag or it hit the edge of the water cannon. And we call those bounce-in balls. They're still McCovey Cove home runs to us. They just don't go on the meter. And some of them are hit quite far. Some were actually going to go further than like my big walk-off home run that I caught on July 29th. It was only hit about 360 feet by Yastrzemski, but I've had other ones that were heading out beyond 400 that hit things and kind of got batted down. But yes, there's a balancing act. I want to be friendly, but my competitors know that I'm all in. And they're always looking over their shoulder, realizing that he's probably coming.
Yeah, and I'm sure those day games are a little bit more populated than some of the night games. So if it's a really cold, does the cold bother you at all? Because I know it might for some people when it's a night game, but you seem pretty conditioned to maybe the coldness of the ballpark, and maybe just put on a sweatshirt and call it a day. But does it bother you at all, or is it kind of an advantage because nobody's going to be there?
It's my advantage when it's cold. Although if you take a look at home runs over time, whenever the air is warmer, more home runs come out per inning. So the ideal thing is a 70-degree day, which is rare for San Francisco. And generally, warmer temperatures are correlated with little or no wind. That's one of the things that hurts us when it's cold. The wind kind of blows generally towards center left, and so it pushes balls away from the cove. But on a warm day, the flags are relaxed, and it's easier for them to reach the cove. Also, having a right-handed pitcher is valuable. I'm guessing now 80% of the home runs are hit off right-handed pitchers. Maybe it's even a little more. The only one who could consistently hit off right or left, either one, was Barry Bonds. He could just, whoever it was, he could hit him. But on most mortal players, it's heavily skewed towards right-handed pitchers. So I may not be there. If there's a lefty put against the Giants, that's a night I might be watching on TV.
Oh, there you go. And I mentioned the balance between being nice and everything. You got flipped off last year in the Cove. I know that there's some competition and everything, some intriguing moments. There's kayaks crashing. Is there an etiquette to it? Like, do you guys have rules out there that some of the new people need to learn if they're, for someone looking to go spend a ball game in the Cove?
Yeah.
How would you explain the etiquette to them?
Yeah. So the number one rule is the ball is not yours until you get your hand on it. So that's the difficult. So if you have the soccer league mentality, well, it land near you, it's yours. No. Basically, the rule for all the regulars is that the first person to get their ball. So sometimes, like on the ball that was the foul ball by Wade, I paddle over 80 feet, between 80 and 100 feet. And there's no way I should have gotten that ball. It landed 2 feet, 3 feet away from three kayakers. They were tied up to the buoy and they didn't give good effort. They should have had that, but I gave maximum effort. I paddled as hard as a 66-year-old can paddle. And at the last, and one thing I'm good at is I'm ambidextrous. I can grab with right or left hand. And on that particular play, I was going to have to grab it quickly with my left hand, which is really my strong hand, and I had no problem doing it. Now, I did throw them the ball back. It was just a foul ball, but if it had been a home run, I would not have given it back to him. I do believe the unwritten rule, which is the first one on there. Now, sometimes I carry a spare ball, and I've thrown someone a McCovey Cove Dave sign ball, and I will have one for 100. So if I have to zoom in and I get that, I will throw them. They will get a McCovey Cove Dave sign ball as a reward. But it means a lot more, I think, to the regulars that have spent hundreds of days out there. I've been there over 650 days now. Eventually, I will probably play more games in the Cove than any player. In fact, by next year, the only one who would be ahead of me would be Brandon Crawford. And if he does retire, well, then the race is on.
Yeah, the race is on for sure. We'll be keeping an eye out. And one thing that I'd be worried about, and you kind of touched on this for a brief second there, I'd be worried about my phone. And I was a little worried about my phone when I went out there, and I rented the I rented the kayak at that I think it's called City Kayak right there.
Yes.
and I rented one of the dry bags, and it took me a little bit to feel comfortable pulling out my phone. And you,
Yeah.
like you said, you
Yes.
need your phone. When you catch these baseballs, you need to blast
Yes.
it out on social media.
Yes.
I mean, how many phones have you gone through? Has that been an issue in the past?
Yeah. So I've lost one phone, and I've seen many phones lost. And so once I started bringing a smartphone out there in about 2012, and that really changed McCovey Cove. Prior to that, we just had the splash camera looking down, and we would wave. I would bring a sign out to, uh, I have these special signs. There's some over here. They're laminated, and I would hold them up. And every once in a while, my mom would go, "Hey, there's my son. He's got the sign." But then,
It's your marketing
with the
background right
advent of,
there.
yes, marketing background, marketing background, that I realized actually I could write my own story. And in fact, it's gotten better and better. I think last year, you could tell me, but I believe the two biggest plays associated with the Giants, maybe even the three biggest plays, as far as people viewing a baseball Giant story, were my stories. And so I did get help from ESPN, but what I've done over time is I've built relationships with sports media, Bleacher Report, Major League Baseball. And when I put content on there, they decide whether it's good enough content. And so it motivates me to put authentic content that they can't get from anybody else. So, like last year when I caught the Mother's Day home run and gave an authentic dedication to my mom, it was viewed 20 million times, which I don't think there's any Giants play. I bet you there's very few, there are even a million. But if you have good content and tell a good baseball story, there are people out there. And the same thing when they caught that foul ball, it got over 10 million views because Bleacher Report ran it. And then they showed it on Monday Night Football 2 days later. It got over 5 million views. And then when I caught the Charlie Blackmon home run, I used my smartphone and I basically did what they call an Instagram reel. And I tried to make it so it was as visible as it could. That night, 3.2 million people, probably most of Colorado, they wanted to hear my story. And it was fantastic. So now what I've learned is that I need relationships with ESPN and Bleacher Report to tell my story. But the key thing is to put out good content that baseball people, it's all real, it's all fun. And um, it's giving me big opportunities. As you know, I was the fan of the year for Sports Illustrated one year, and I've got to do things that I would never do, and all from my kayak. So I'm very, very grateful. So getting back to your question, I use what they call a dry box. It's a floating dry box. It's easily open up back and forth. So when a right-handed hitter's up, I might look at social media, but when a left-hander's up, I put it in the dry box and I lock it. So many times Krupp and Kuip will see the dry box floating when I'm swimming for a home run, and they'll, oh, that must be a speaker. No, it's a floating dry box with my iPhone safely tucked in there. So for people coming out to McCovey Cove, the best thing is to have a small floating dry box if you become a regular. I lost a phone trying to be a good Samaritan. People really wanted pictures on a very windy day. And I said, I'll use my camera. And as I took my camera up, my paddle hit my phone and it went to the bottom of McCovey Cove. But the next day, I swam the 20 feet. I'm trained to find things in no visibility. I found it. And the reason I had to find it was because I had an insurance policy for $89 that if I return it to an Apple store, whether it was working or not, and I got a new one, got a new A plus.
And I'm sure the store that you turned it in with the insurance policy was pretty in awe with that story.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's
So
pretty awesome. And you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but what is your relationship with the Giants organization? Because I know you're in a lot of the
yeah,
promos.
yes,
They do put a lot of attention on you at times. Do you have an official relationship with them where it's pretty easy to reach out to them? I know you work with them on
yes.
the Crawford home run, but
Yeah.
what is your, I guess,
So
official? Do
what
they ever
happened?
come to you with ideas?
Yes, definitely. So actually this idea for the upcoming bobblehead on May 20th. That would be my idea. So I told Lasher, I said, you got to come up. I would have a bobblehead. It's got to have the splash meter on it, and it should have a counter on it. Now, I think their counter could have been better than it is, but the counter concept, I actually wrote to them, and I made some other recommendations about having a collective video, different things. I said, you're going to see them. And I'm actually working with them later on today, coordinating some of the stuff that will only happen once Splash Hit 100 happens. I'm coordinating the portions of the Cove activity that will happen. So I do that when it on like sometimes the Giants will say, hey, we're going to do a video in McCovey Cove. Could you get 100 people or so and could you organize some events? And I said, you bring Lucille down there. So I help them and they help me. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know the broadcasters and a lot of players through this activity, which has really been fun to me. No, the broadcasters to me are as good or better than the players because they're around longer. So our broadcast team, I just love them.
And you have the radio in the Cove, and you don't necessarily see the players, but you hear the broadcaster. So in a sense, you're kind of more connected to them in a lot of ways.
Yes. So John Miller has called most of my home runs because I'm listening on radio, and he generally does more radio. And historically, he has called more than Dave Fleming. I also listen to the calls on TV once I get home. So I do hear those, but most of mine have been with John Miller. And so he's got a great voice. And those first few words he says, if he gives me any indication like it's going to the foul and I'm in a different spot, I start motoring as fast as I can. And I just really treasured. The Giants have had great broadcasters for at least since 1963, because that's when I started. So we're a very lucky franchise because I feel like great broadcasters make the game more enjoyable for the fans. And I remember Lon Simmons and Frank Hodges listening to him in this very room and 60 years ago.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, here's one out of the blue question. Has a McCovey Cove splash hit ever just whacked somebody in the face or something and it's sitting in a kayak, or have they all just, landed into the water
so
on a
far
fly?
Not. We've had no person like this been hit in the head. Someone was hit where their hand was in the water, but it wasn't really like, no one's been taken out. We've had some unusual things. We did in the early days have a dog retrieve one of the splash hit 13. So when it comes to celebrating 100, I can tell you so far, 31 different fans, including myself and one dog, well, we've recovered 98 home runs. One actually sunk in Splash at 75, Stephen Vogt. But we've had some very unusual things. No ball has landed in the boat, like into like a inflatable on a fly, but eventually it will happen. And I always dream of catching one with my bare hand. It's going to be difficult, but if the ball came in a certain area, not directly at my face, but just a little, like a foot off, I would try to make the catch with my hand. I would do my best.
That would be pretty. That would be another reason for you to go viral. I mean, ESPN, they would have that all over the place. Bleacher Report, they blast it all out. And best of luck to you, Dave. I really appreciate you coming on the show. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me on, and go Giants. And I hope to be waving the 100 ball to you, but if not, I hope it's one of my good buddies.
Yes, I will wave on Monday. I'll be there covering Monday's game, and I'll walk by whenever I do my food trip, and I'll wave, and I'll make sure that the game hasn't started yet, so that you have all the focus on Splash Hit 100.
Thank you so much, Steven. Thanks for having me on.
And everybody could follow Dave on social media at McCovey Cove Dave. He's very active on Twitter, Instagram, so go check his stuff out. And then everybody could follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast, and then on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts, go check us out. And we will see you next time.